Hello, and welcome back to this series on Dmitri Klebanov's First Symphony. I'm Nicholas Hirsch, music director of the Modesto Symphony Orchestra, and in this video we are exploring the third movement of this symphony, the Marcia Funebre, or Funeral March. And now if you haven't seen the previous videos on the First Symphony, please do yourself a favor and go back and watch those now before jumping in here, because there are lots of callbacks in this movement to the previous movements. So the second movement, the scherzo, ends with a pretty substantial crash bang in A minor, like this. And now the funeral march begins softly, a half step higher in B flat. So much wonderful stuff to unpack with this theme, not the least of which is bass clarinet solo. Wow, what a beautiful choice of timbre for this dark music we're hearing. And then we have the accompaniment. We have these rumbles, these rumbling grace notes in the bass. It actually brings to mind the whole thing, the whole combination brings to mind a very famous symphonic funeral march, the march from Beethoven's Eroica Symphony, which uses these same effects. These three grace notes, played like this in quick succession, are meant to evoke a kind of deep drum roll, the kind of drum that might accompany a funeral march. And then we have, too, this characteristic dotted rhythm. It's this dum-tum-team, tum-team. It's a very characteristic march rhythm, which, that combined with the key of B-flat, can only make you think of this perhaps infamous funeral march. Another peculiar thing about this Klebanov theme is that in the first bar, we seem to be in B-flat major with a D natural in the tune. Simply B-flat major. But then 2 bars later, we get a D-flat as part of the melody, like this. That D-flat... now B-flat minor against B-flat major. And again, even in that same third bar of the piece, we have D-flat against D natural, followed by this beautiful Hebraic appoggiatura into the F. It kind of makes you doubt your own ears. Are we in major or minor? What is going on here? Well, in fact, this is one of Klebanov's favorite harmonic techniques, and we get to hear a lot of this major-minor interplay a lot through this third movement, and then again as well in the finale. One more thing to note about this third movement tune is the opening intervals. Take a listen again. We have that rising fourth followed by a half step. Gosh, that reminds me a lot of a theme in the first movement, that nostalgic second theme. Whereas this first movement version of this has this kind of sense of longing and nostalgia. Here in the funeral march, of course, all of that nostalgia, all of that hope and lightness is gone. So we have all of these components, all of these marvelous things to talk about, and this is just 8 bars, maybe a few seconds of music. This is just wonderfully complex and intricate stuff. And because there's so much to unpack, Klebanov is able to stick with this theme for a good few minutes in this third movement before introducing a new theme. And that's this much more longing, sighing theme in the violas with these cute little flute interjections. It goes like this. This little falling third is a classic reference to the cuckoo, which makes sense in context here, as the Babi ravine is a heavily wooded area. So a bird call may have been one of the very last things the victims of the Nazis heard as they were marched to their own grave. And again, in this little bird call versus the longing viola tune, we have again a little major-minor interaction. There's F-sharp major, F-sharp minor. So again, we have this beautiful little interplay between the string music and the cuckoo's call. And then suddenly the music changes completely, and we get this much more violent version of the funeral march theme, now on the trumpets and accompanied by these screaming, screeching string scales. Now, in the trombones and the basses, the Babi Yar theme itself, plucked straight from the first movement. All of this tumult, this chaos, comes to a head and then precipitates, it condenses into these brutal, descending figures in the strings and xylophone. And then we're left with just one note, one F repeated brutally over and over. And then finally, we lead back into the most grandiose return of the opening funeral march tune. Slowly it unwinds, until finally something most unexpected. A wordless voice singing this now familiar tune as it fades into the distance. This is such an evocative orchestration. You can imagine this as a ghost of a Babi Yar victim, maybe even a synagogue cantor. And this is the only time this voice will appear in the whole symphony, just these few bars. And by the way, this is actually something that they've gotten quite wrong in the recording that you're hearing right now, because in the symphony manuscript on the title page, there's a handwritten note from Klebanov that says the voice should be smooth and non-vibrato. And as you can hear, in the recording anyway, it is a pretty vibrato-heavy rendition. So, to hear it performed finally the right way, please come hear us, the Modesto Symphony Orchestra, perform this remarkable, remarkable symphony at the Gallo Center for the Arts on November 14 and 15, 2025, Modesto, California. And stay tuned now for the final video in this series on Klebanov's grand finale. So until then, thanks for watching.